And joining us now in our Melbourne studio is Senator Eric Abetz, the leader of the opposition in the Senate and the opposition spokesman responsible for Comcare. Thanks for being there. And can I start by asking you, how hard was it, first of all, to get a hold of this report under the Freedom of Information Act?
Tony, first of all, I asked questions at Senate estimates. We were then given a letter which we thought was somewhat obfuscating about the issues. As a result, the FOI request was put in, and tonight we have revealed exactly the sort of maladministration over which two ministers, Senator Chris Evans and Chris Bowen, have presided. And I would have thought Julia Gillard has to answer the question whether this sort of ministerial negligence is of an acceptable standard to her and her government.
Well, Comcare, to be precise, has revealed that it seems in a way that Comcare is at war with the Immigration Department.
What I think is happening is that the two ministers and the department are living in denial that the problem arose when the government changed its policy. They then didn't want to admit that there was overcrowding, and keep in mind that this Comcare report tells us that Christmas Island was 250% above occupational capacity and 25% above surge capacity. So overcrowded. Why was it overcrowded? Because border protection policy of the government had failed, and they were not willing to admit their failure. As a result, they were not willing to address all the issues that Comcare has now laid open for all to see.
Okay, who is to blame, and who does the report blame, in fact, for the systematic failures identified in the immigration detention centres, failures of training, failures of critical incident management, risk assessment processes, this whole range of failures?
I think there was a culture of denial by the ministers that then went into the department as well. Quite clearly, there were issues of overcrowding because border protection policy had failed, but nobody wanted to admit that publicly, and therefore taking risk assessment measures was in fact acknowledgement of failure of the border protection policy. As a result, the ministers didn't want to know about it, and I think that permeated into the department. But clearly there has been a legacy of maladministration, not being awake to the scenarios that might arise. And of course we have seen the fires, we have seen the riots, and the Australian taxpayer has to pay for that maladministration. And you know, this is a triple whammy that Comcare have found. They have found that departmental officials were at risk, contractors were at risk, and the detainees were at risk. So everybody was at risk because of this culture of denial by the government that their border protection policies had failed.
You talk about taxpayers' money, and of course taxpayers' money actually pays for Serco, the private company that is paid to manage these centres. It's under a very extensive contract, and a strict contract for that matter. Do these issues indicate that Serco is not living up to its contract conditions?
In fact, I think some of Comcare's assessment indicates that Serco were contracted, for example, on Christmas Island to deal with an occupational rate of about 400 up to a surge of 800, but they were having to deal with over 1,000, well and beyond their contractual terms. And
we've made that point earlier, so just let me bring you to this. I mean, what the report also finds is serious levels of under-training among the staff. I mean, training is the responsibility of Serco. Should Serco continue in its role as the private contractor running these centres?
It's early days yet, but having read the report to the extent that I have, the blame seems to lay fair and square with the department, and in fact on occasions where Serco has tried to be innovative in the management, the Department of Immigration has in fact stifled that innovation.
What do you make of the claims in the report that Comcare investigators were hampered by a lack of cooperation from the Immigration Department?
That is a matter of great concern, and clearly what that indicates is that the department must have had some concerns as to what Comcare might discover, as a result of which this hampering occurred, which, might I add, was part of the culture that I experienced with a letter that Comcare wrote to the committee after it had been to the Minister's office, where clearly the original letter that we got under FOI was changed after discussions with Minister Chris Evans' office. And
okay, well, let's just talk. Well, let's just talk. I'm sorry. Let's just talk about what the Comcare people are saying. They're saying the immigration department had extremely tight itineraries when they visited. That the immigration hierarchy refused to release critical information to them. I mean, these are quite serious allegations. And as I said at the beginning, it seems that Comcare, one part of the government, is at war with another part of the government.
These are very serious allegations, and it is indicative of the culture that has permeated from the ministry into the department, that they want to live in denial about the problems, and then when Comcare is quite rightfully going about its duty, seeking to ensure that departmental workers, contractors and detainees are in a safe environment, we have the department trying to block those investigations or stifle them, especially during the year 2010, according to the report, and that occurred for so long is a matter of grave concern to the Coalition.
Eric Abetz, we'll have to leave you there. We thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks a lot, Tony.